Adverbial participles can be a challenge to translate sometimes simply because they have such a wide range of possible meanings. Let's take a look at Ephesians 2:1. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Ephesians 2:1 begins a pretty long sentence, and you'll notice that it begins with a participial phrase. So it's, and you being dead in trespasses and sins. And by the way, this humon, when you put a possessive like this at the end of a series, it can apply to all of them. So it's a perfectly legitimate translation to say, and you being dead in your trespasses and sins. Perfectly legitimate. But what's really interesting is when translations change their minds. I always like looking at these things. In the NRSV, it does what most translations does. It says, and you were dead. In other words, it's taking a dependent construction and it's turning it into an indicative verb. I don't especially like that unless it's absolutely necessary. It's interesting then to go look at the RSV, and it says, and he made alive when you were dead. In other words, it's taking ontos as a temporal participle, that he made us alive when we were dead. You go over the Net Bible, and it says, and although you were dead. In other words, it's treating the participle as a concessive participle. By the way, you may be wondering why in the RSV you have this he made alive. Where'd they get that from? Well, if you go down to verses 4 and 5, you have another very long sentence, but it's God. Then you have modifiers. Modifiers made us alive. And so you have the basic sentence of God made us alive. And that's the context under which you can then pull it up and say, but he made alive. So they're just bringing the subject and verb to the front of the sentence purely for English style reasons. But anyway, I thought there was a good little illustration of how different people handle participles. So there's your participle. NRSV and most translations turned it into an indicative. The old RSV made it temporal, and the Net makes it concessive. It's all just a matter of context.